What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We finally have Pac-12 schedules, the last Power 5 conference to release their schedules for the upcoming 2021 season, and we're going to kick things off here with the Oregon Ducks. If you're an Oregon fan, or if you just like to keep up with the Ducks, make sure you subscribe to our Oregon channel. You'll get all kinds of Oregon content over there. You should see it pop up on your screen, but you can find all of our team channels at sg1sports.com/channels. All right, Oregon in 2020 only played five regular season games. I'm sure Duck fans are happy to be back to a normal 12-game schedule this year. Of course, they got to play in the Pac-12 championship last year just because because Washington did not get to play. And then you got a bowl game. So they wound up playing 7 games, although, again, only 5 of those were regular season games. This is a schedule for 2021. And before we go game by game, we are going to look at the games outside of the division, because we know Oregon is going to play every one in the Pac-12 North, obviously. So who do they play in the non-conference? And out of the Pac-12 South, well, in the non-conference, they'll play Fresno State, Ohio State, and Stony Brook. Obviously, an easy win there with Stony Brook. Fresno State, a quality group of 5 team. And Ohio State going to be a very tough matchup on the road. Potentially 2 top 10 teams. Oregon probably won't be in the top 10 to kick off the season. If they win that game, they will be. But still, that's a huge game. One of the biggest non-conference games, I think, of the season. And then who do they play out of the South? They'll play Arizona, UCLA, Colorado, and Utah. I think that's a pretty good lineup there. Really, when you look at the South, I think the 3 teams you don't want to play are Utah, which they do play, and then Arizona State and USC. I feel like those are the 3 teams you probably don't want to play, although the South is kind of tough to predict right now. UCLA seems like they're starting to turn the corner. Colorado was good last year. So, it really doesn't matter that much. I don't know if USC and Arizona State will finish in the top 3 or not. I think Arizona probably is the team that you do want to play, and they get to play them. So a pretty good lineup there out of the Pac-12 South. A pretty tough non-conference schedule when you put Ohio State in there. They will kick things off again with Fresno State on September the 4th. That'll be a home game for Oregon. Who knows what the fan situation is going to be. I believe we will see fans across all of college football in the Pac-12. Maybe it's not 100% capacity, but there will be some fans there, I'm sure. And so they're going to have that home field advantage against a quality team. Fresno State, again, is not a bad group of 5 team. A couple of years ago, they were actually really good. So that'll be a good matchup there. Good way to start off the season. Then they'll play Ohio State on September 11th, like I mentioned before. One of the biggest non-conference games of the year. And it's kind of a playoff eliminator game, potentially. I think if you win that game, you're going to be in really good shape for potentially making a run at the college football playoff. You lose that game, it's going to be really tough, especially for Oregon, because the schedule just, outside of that game, how many top 25 wins are you going to have? Probably not many. So they need to win that game if they're going to have a chance to do that, or at least be competitive. Now, if they lose that game by a field goal and they win the rest of their games, and Ohio State's a playoff team, Oregon's going to have a great case. So it's really not necessarily winning that game. I think obviously that would go a long way. But you need to at least be really close in that game, competitive, if you're going to have a shot to be in that conversation at the end of the season. Stony Brook is next. That should be a win, obviously. Arizona, September 25th. That is a home game for Oregon. So outside of Ohio State, you really like these first 3 games, again, outside of Ohio State, to start off the season, and should get them off to a good start. Then they get into the grind of the Pac-12. Stanford on the road. Stanford does not bring a lot back this year. That's a game I really like Oregon in, but it's on the road, so I don't think that's a game where you can assume it's going to be a win. You look at last year, Oregon did win that game 35-14. So again, I like their chances, but it's going to be a tough matchup there on the road. Cal at home. Cal brings back a lot from last season. Remember, Cal beat Oregon last year, so that could be a tough matchup. There is a bye week in between there. They'll have their bye week between Stanford and Cal. Really kind of early in the year, not necessarily before a huge game, but hopefully that'll help them to not overlook Cal or be extra prepared in that game. You don't want to lose that game again this year, obviously. And then they'll play UCLA on October 23rd. Could be a sneaky tough game there. Colorado on October the 30th. Colorado's pretty good last year. We'll see how they look this year. Washington, that is a big game there. November 6th, a game that I think has a a very big chance of deciding the Pac-12 North. They're going to play them on the road. Washington has a lot coming back. This is going to be a huge matchup there. And again, I think it's the game that will decide the Pac-12 North. Washington State on November the 13th. Cougars were surprisingly competitive last year. They weren't great, but they were better than I thought they would be. And they have a ton of production coming back. So that could be a challenge there. Utah on the road, another difficult matchup. Utah is top 10 in the country in returning production. They've also got some transfers coming in. That right there is going to be a really tough matchup late in the season. And then Oregon State on November 27th. Home game for Oregon. I'm going to want revenge after that game, that loss to Oregon State last year. I don't think Oregon State will be... That's going to be a close game, I think. I think Oregon is the better team, and they're playing at home, but it's a rivalry. And again, Oregon State is getting better. This is a team, a program that is not the laughing stock of the Pac-12 anymore. In fact, they weren't even the worst team in the Pac-12 last year. And again, they did upset Oregon. So that'll be a big-time matchup there to close out the season. And you look through this schedule, there are some tough games on the road in Utah, Washington, and Ohio State. Maybe even UCLA in that conversation as well. So overall, the schedule for Oregon is not brutal. They don't have a bunch of top 10, top 15 teams, but they do have Ohio State. They do have Washington and Utah, and those are the three games that I circle. I think those are going to be the toughest games. And having to play all three of them on the road makes for a pretty tough schedule for Oregon in 2021. All right, we have previewed the 2021 schedule for the Oregon Ducks. Now I'm going to give you a projected record, and to be clear, this is not an official prediction. We're still a long ways away from making any real predictions. It's simply a projection based off the schedule and just kind of their general odds to win each game. Again, here is the schedule, 4-3 last year. The scale that we use to do this is on your screen here. If it's a 50-50 game, the game will stay in white. Less than 10% in red, 10 to 25% in orange, 26 to 40% in yellow, 60 to 74 in purple, 75 to 90 in blue. More than 90%, it'll be in green, and that is where we will start. You've got one of those. One easy win on the schedule. I think that's Stony Brook, FCS opponent. It would be a major upset if Oregon were to lose that game. They should win that game. I think it's close to a 99% chance of them winning. And so there you go. That's the one green game. Now, how about the blue games where they're going to be favored by double digits? It would be a pretty big upset if they were to lose. I think you have a couple of these. I think you've got Arizona. It's actually three of these. Arizona, Stanford, and Fresno State. Fresno State, a game that Oregon should win. I realize that they're not a bad group of five team or anything, but Oregon should win that game, and they'll be favored by double digits. Arizona has really been struggling. They might be the worst team in the Pac-12 now. And then you have Stanford, who has also been struggling. Oregon beat them easily last year. Stanford does not return much production this year. They're one of the lowest teams, I think, in the country. So you would expect Oregon to win those games, and that means really 4 of your first 5 games are going to be pretty easy. If they could somehow beat Ohio State, they're going to more than likely be 5-0. It would be a big surprise if they were to lose one of these other games. So now let's go to the purple, the 60 to 74% games. These are the games where I think Oregon's going to be favored by about a touchdown. And, it's kind of tough to do this because that's a pretty big range, 60 to 74%. And I think most of these games are closer to 74 than they are 60, which is why I did a little bit different formula for Oregon, which I'll get to in a second. But I think you've got 5 games here. I think Cal, UCLA, Colorado, Washington State, and Oregon State, all games that Oregon will be favored in. That's not going to be like it's a guaranteed win. They could absolutely lose to one of these teams, but more than likely they will win at least. You'd say that they're going to win 4 out of 5 at least. They will be favored, I think, by 6, 7, 8 points in these matchups. Cal beat them last year, so that's a tricky game. Cal was a lot better than their record would suggest last season. UCLA's getting better as a program, as a team. Colorado was a surprise last year. Washington State has a lot of production coming back. Oregon State's a rivalry game. So yeah, all these games you got to be on lookout. If Oregon gets upset this year, it's probably going to be to one of these 5 teams. And the good news is you get 4 out of those 5 games at home. UCLA the only road game. So again, if that would be a game. If there was going to be an upset, you might circle that UCLA game on the road there on October 23rd. All right, so how about the games where they're going to be underdogs? I think you've got one game where they will clearly be an underdog. That's Ohio State, playing them on the road. They'll have a chance, and that's why it's in the yellow, not in the orange. They'll have a chance in this game, but playing on the road, playing early in the year against a very talented team. I got to say that Ohio State will be favored by about a touchdown in this matchup. Ohio State has some questions, though. Oregon has a lot more production coming back than the Buckeyes. So, again, they'll have a shot in this one. I think it's going to be a good game. And then that leaves us with two 50-50 games, Washington and Utah. These are the games that I think will really determine Oregon's success in 2021. Let's say they beat everyone else here. All the games they're favored in, they win all those games. They lose to Ohio State. It comes down to these two games. You win both of these games, you win the Pac-12 championship, and if you were competitive against Ohio State, if it was a close game, Oregon is absolutely going to be in the playoff conversation, but they have to win all of these games. Washington and Utah are going to be very tough games on the road. I look at the rosters and I say Oregon has a little bit better roster, but playing these games again on the road, if we have fans back in the Pac-12 this year, both of these teams, Washington and Utah, have a chance to be top 25 teams. They're going to be very solid this year, and those are going to be the games. If they can somehow win those two games, it's going to be a great year. If they split those two games and they win every other game in the Pac-12, they're probably still going to go to the Pac-12 championship and still have a chance to go to the Rose Bowl. But if we're talking big picture, talking about the college football playoff, they're going to have to more than likely win both of these games. So what happens when we average it all out? Well, normally the way I do this is the games in blue, the games in green are counted as wins, orange and red losses, which you don't have any of those for Oregon. And then I use 40% for yellow, 50% for white, 60% for purple. But that was kind of coming out in between two different records. And when I look at these games in purple, I think they're all, clearly above 60%. And so I bumped that percentage up just a little bit for this particular projection. Because, again, the projection was coming out almost right in the middle of two different records. So the projection for Oregon, when I did that, it came out to be 9-3. So, again, when I used the original formula, 60% for the purple, it was 8-4, but it was really in between 8-4 and 9-3. So we're going to bump that up to 9-3 just because of the fact that if you just nudge these percentages up just a little bit, it's going to bump that up to 9-3. So I feel like this was a more fair projection for Oregon. Again, it's not a perfect formula if you're not going to put exact percentages on all the games. So the projection again for Oregon is 9-3. I think they absolutely can do better than that. The odds would tell you, they might lose to Ohio State. They might split Washington and Utah. But the odds would say if you've got 5 games where you're a favorite but not a big favorite, you're probably going to lose one of those games at least. So, that would kind of have them splitting Washington, Utah, losing Ohio State, then losing one of these games in the purple, and giving you a 9-3 projection for Oregon. I think that's probably worst case scenario. I think this team can do better. They are loaded with talent, and I think they are the favorite in the Pac-12, and that's why, again, I say this is not a prediction. I feel pretty confident that my prediction will be better than 9-3 for Oregon. There's a long ways to go before I make that official prediction, but there are some competitive teams in the Pac-12. I know you don't have a bunch of great teams in the Pac-12, but you got a bunch of solid teams, and when you don't bring your A game, these teams can knock you off, and that's why it might be tough for Oregon to run the table in the Pac-12. So 9-3 again, the projection. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Give me your thoughts, your projection down in the comments below.